Rain had a way of exposing the truth. That evening, it fell in heavy sheets, turning the city streets into mirrors of broken light, when a single father knelt in the mud beside a luxury car worth more than his yearly salary, his hands shaking from cold and fear, knowing that one wrong decision had already cost him his job, and might cost him his future. He did not know that inside the silent, rain-soaked car sat the very woman who owned the company that had just fired him, watching everything through a fogged window. Before the story pulls you deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet acts of humanity that change lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts around the world. Daniel Harris had never imagined his life would shrink to moments measured by rainstorms and unpaid bills. At 38, he was a widower and a father to a 7-year-old boy named Oliver, whose smile carried both the innocence of childhood and the shadow of loss. Daniel worked as a senior mechanic at a high-end automotive service company in the city, a place that catered to executives and celebrities who treated cars like jewelry and mechanics like invisible hands. He was good at his job, precise and patient, the kind of man who fixed things quietly and never asked for praise. Since his wife passed away from an illness that arrived too fast and left too little time to prepare, Daniel had learned to survive on discipline and silence. Every morning, he woke before dawn, made breakfast for Oliver, packed his school bag, and promised himself that as long as he could keep working, his son would never feel the ground disappear beneath his feet. That promise was tested on the day the rain began. It started as a gray afternoon, the kind that pressed low against the city and made people hurry without knowing why. Daniel was finishing his shift when a call came through about a stranded vehicle just outside the service center. Company policy was clear: mechanics were not to work on vehicles outside designated areas without authorization, especially not luxury models with sensitive systems. But Daniel stepped outside anyway when he saw the car, a sleek black sedan stalled in the rain, hazard lights blinking weakly like a heartbeat slowing down. Traffic rushed past, spraying water, and the car sat helpless, exposed, dangerous. Daniel thought of Oliver waiting at home, of the bills stacked on the kitchen table, of the warning his supervisor had given just a week earlier about bending rules. Still, he grabbed his tools and ran into the rain. It was instinct, the same instinct that made him reach for his son in the night when nightmares came, the same instinct that had once made him hold his wife's hand in a hospital room filled with machines. He did not see a luxury car, he saw a problem and a person who might need help. The rain soaked him through as he worked quickly, kneeling on wet asphalt, fingers numbing as he traced the issue to a flooded ignition system. He shielded the engine with his body, using his jacket to keep water from pouring in, his breath coming out in short bursts as the cold crept into his bones. Inside the car, the woman watched him silently. Her name was Evelyn Carter, though Daniel did not know that then. She was in her late 40s, composed even under stress, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She had been returning from a board meeting when the car failed, and the driver she usually employed was sick that day. She had tried calling roadside assistance, but the wait time stretched endlessly, and the rain showed no mercy. Evelyn noticed the way Daniel worked, focused and careful, how he checked the surroundings before touching anything, how he seemed more concerned about doing the job right than about being seen. When the engine finally turned over and the car came back to life, Daniel felt relief wash over him stronger than the rain. He stepped back, soaked and exhausted, giving a brief nod before turning to leave. He did not ask for thanks. He did not even look toward the driver's seat. What he did not know was that security cameras from the service center had captured everything. By the time Daniel returned inside, dripping water onto the polished floor, his supervisor was waiting with a tight expression and folded arms. Policy had been broken. Risk had been taken. The customer had not been officially registered. Explanations fell flat against rules written in bold letters. Daniel was fired on the spot, his access card taken, his locker emptied into a cardboard box that felt far too light for the weight it carried. He walked home through the rain, each step heavier than the last, rehearsing how he would explain it to Oliver without letting fear leak into his voice. That night, after his son fell asleep clutching a worn toy car, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the dark window. He felt like he had failed twice, once as an employee and once as a father. The city lights blurred as tears mixed with exhaustion, and for the first time since his wife's death, Daniel allowed himself to wonder if doing the right thing was a luxury he could no longer afford. The days that followed were slow and unforgiving. Daniel searched for work, moving from garage to garage, but word traveled fast in their industry. Fired for breaking protocol was not a story employers liked. Savings dwindled. Oliver sensed the tension, becoming quieter, watching his father with eyes too perceptive for his age. Daniel sold his watch, then his old guitar, cutting away pieces of himself to keep their life afloat. At night, he lay awake listening to the city, wondering how close he was to losing everything he had fought to protect. Meanwhile, Evelyn Carter had not forgotten the man in the rain. As the founder and owner of the automotive company Daniel worked for, she had built her empire on precision and control. She valued systems, policies, and measurable results. Yet the image of Daniel shielding her engine with his own body stayed with her, unsettling something she had carefully buried under years of corporate armor. She reviewed the footage herself, watching the rain blur the camera lens, watching Daniel move with urgency and care. She asked for his file, read about his performance history, his reliability, the personal note about his wife's passing. Something about the contrast between the rule he broke and the humanity he showed would not let her rest. A week later, Daniel received a letter requesting his presence at the company headquarters. He assumed it was a formality, maybe paperwork related to his termination. He wore his only suit, slightly worn but clean, and left Oliver with a neighbor. The building loomed taller than he remembered, glass and steel reflecting a sky that threatened rain once more. Sitting in the waiting area, Daniel felt small, bracing himself for disappointment. When Evelyn entered the room, Daniel did not recognize her at first. Out of the rain and into the light, she looked different, composed, authoritative, her presence filling the space. She studied him quietly, the silence stretching until it felt like another test. Daniel stood, clutching his folder, ready to accept whatever came next. He did not plead. He did not justify. He simply waited, the way he had learned to wait in hospital corridors and school offices, hoping but prepared for loss. Evelyn spoke about policies and responsibility, about the importance of structure in a company that handled high-value assets. Daniel listened, nodding, his chest tight. Then her tone shifted, softer, reflective. She spoke about rain and choices, about moments when rules collide with humanity. She told him she had been in that car, that she had watched him risk his job for a stranger without knowing who she was. The words hit Daniel like a wave, leaving him stunned, exposed. What followed was not a dramatic reversal but a careful reckoning. Evelyn admitted that her company had grown rigid, that in protecting itself it had sometimes forgotten the people who made it function. She offered Daniel his job back, not as a favor, but with a new role, one that would help train younger mechanics, instilling not just technical excellence but judgment and integrity. It came with better pay, flexible hours, and support for his family. The decision was framed as a correction, not a miracle. Daniel accepted, his voice steady though his hands trembled. He left the building feeling lighter, the sky breaking open into clear blue as if the city itself exhaled. That evening, he picked Oliver up early from school and took him for ice cream, watching his son's laughter spill out like sunlight. At home, Daniel cooked dinner with a sense of peace he had not felt in years, realizing that sometimes doing the right thing did not end in punishment, but in unexpected grace. Over the months that followed, Daniel flourished in his new role. He became a quiet leader, the kind people trusted because he had nothing to prove. Evelyn watched the culture of her company shift slowly, subtly, as stories spread about the mechanic who had been fired and rehired, about the owner who had chosen compassion over convenience. It did not change the world, but it changed their corner of it. On another rainy evening, Daniel and Oliver stood by the window, watching water streak down the glass.